They've been standing for 40 years, but they'll take 5 seconds to blow down.
The finest rockery we'll have in Great Britain.
This is how most tall buildings are demolished. It's considered a safe method which can save time and money. Throughout the country, tower blocks, chimneys, bridges and industrial buildings are blown down. But not in Birmingham.
Really been no significant use of explosives in Birmingham. There is a kind of folklore that Birmingham doesn't allow explosives. It is a folklore.
20, 30 years ago, where somebody did a bit of water tower and a piece of concrete went on the Lord Mayor's garden or something.
A piece of the structure managed to dislodge itself and landed in the Lord Mayor's lap.
The way that he put it was that they had a lump of concrete land on the Lord Mayor's desk. Which obviously wasn't very good.
Whether it's really happened in quite that way or not from all those years ago, it's difficult to know.
Now a local man wants to change demolition history. He's going to blow down 2 20-storey tower blocks on an inner-city housing estate. Lee Bank has been plagued by poverty, crime and deprivation, and the destruction of the flats marks a new beginning for the area.
It's very exciting. It's a good buzz. To date, we've not been involved with buildings of this height, nor have we been involved with explosive methods of demolition. It's a family firm, and when I first started we were predominantly involved with excavation projects and decontamination, and I took an interest in demolition work. I wanted to make an impression in the Midlands area and ensure that we were a well-respected company and we're at the forefront of the demolition industry. Well, we've currently only got 5 guys that are left working on site at the minute, 2 weeks prior to blowdown.
Getting to the forefront, Mark has had to convince Birmingham City Council that he's the best man for the job and that explosives are the best method.
I'm quite excited about it personally. I think it's an excellent opportunity. When they put forward the explosive demolition issue, Birmingham City looked quite hard at their proposals.
The key to Mark winning the contract was getting the right explosives expert. Phil Lowe is that man. A man who's dedicated his life to the art of blowing things down.
Been involved in tower blocks over 15 years altogether. That actually started with my father in 1981 as an apprentice, and we did all sorts of explosive work, quarrying, tunnelling, and we did some demolition work. The structures we did was basic chimneys, that type of structure. Must have done 300 or 400 different kind of chimneys. A lot of industrial structures on collieries, coking plants and steelworks.
Towering above the houses, this 200-foot steel coke plant in Coventry is a relatively straightforward job for Phil. 50 kilograms of explosives will help it meet its doom.
It's noisy, this.
Fire!
Prepare this, it took 3 days, which is not a problem. But when you get involved with the tower blocks, which in Birmingham, it's 2 months job to prepare them.
Explosives have only been used during the last 30 years. 50 years ago, ropes were the main method for pulling buildings down. The slums were cleared away to make room for the revolutionary tower blocks. City planners thought that high-rise homes with grassy parkland were the perfect style of housing for building communities.
Lee Bank was built late 50s, early 60s, and the concept of tower blocks and towers in the park was invented. And around 450 tower blocks were built in Birmingham during the 1960s. And there are 28 tower blocks in this area. So it was obviously a major part of that redevelopment programme.
The Queen Mother was invited to Lee Bank to see the exciting new flats that Birmingham was proud to show off. All the tower blocks were given grand names to encourage people to move into them. The two to be blown down, Longleat and Charlecote, were the stately homes of the skies. 30 years on, and far from palatial, the run-down 20-storey blocks will be replaced with modern low-rise homes as part of a £100 million development.
They've done quite a job of cleaning this one out, actually.
Yeah.
The first stage of preparation involves clearing the flats.
The area is pretty bad. It's got a bad drug problem, high crime rate.
Gets worse as we get further into it.
A number of flats, if not all of the flats that were being used, either when they were inhabited by drug users or by dropouts and general junkies, vagrants, when the block was empty, we were finding dozens and dozens, hundreds of hypodermic needles in through the box.
Well, it's quite clear from the stuff that's been left in here that the people who lived here had quite a habit. Proceed with caution, I think, Mark.
Yeah.
Serious need for a proper risk assessment before you guys come anywhere close to it to make sure that it's properly cleaned out.
Not all the residents abuse their properties. Long-term homeowners planning to stay through the redevelopment are Joyce and George Sewell. That's if their house survives the blowdown.
Oh, it's terrible, this, yeah. She's terrible.
31 years we've lived here, and it was good when we first come. Clean. Every window in the flats was clean. Nice people.
We're currently standing 9 metres away from the closest building. This is probably the biggest headache that we've got on the job, trying to ensure that firstly when we drop the structure that there's no damage to this building as a result of dropping it, and also that we stay well enough away from it to ensure that they can get back in when they're supposed to, a couple of hours, 6 hours after the building's been dropped.
It'll be a mess, I suppose, for a few years, but still, it was our choice to stay, so we'll have to put up with it.
The general idea is that the building is fired, the explosives are fired, starting from that side, working across. As that falls, that then pulls the next stage delay onto it. It carries on working across. The general principle is that by the time it gets to this back gable elevation, that it's pulling the whole structure down and away from the building here that we're trying to protect.
Meticulous planning is needed to ensure the building does fall down, and when it goes, it falls in exactly the right place. It begins with pre-weakening the walls.
Prior to firing it, you can take 50% of the load-bearing walls out.
The walls that are left will be drilled and the holes filled with explosives.
These are the shot holes that are drilled horizontal, and what they do, they take the remainder of the wall out. That's not on every level, that is on certain blast levels.
To check that Phil has picked the right explosives for the job, a test blast is done in one section of wall.
This is a non-electric shock tube detonator that is detonated via a shock tube, not an electric system. That is taped onto the detonating cord, which is 40 gram. That is the explosive core in there. Now that should be sufficient to take a rib out. The full length of that, there's 2 holes in there that will take a section out of that. Now that is put in the hole, and then that is confined with clay so it doesn't fire out like a shotgun.
This is really a formality. It's just a case of proving that what we're proposing is correct and adequate to make sure on the day that it's right. If we didn't go through this process and there was a problem, people could come back and say, well, what did you do to ensure that there weren't any accidents or mistakes? And obviously this is the way that we show that what we're doing is right. Is Peter Poles now going up through the building to check all floors are clear?
Because of problems in the past, with projectiles flying out during the explosion, Phil and Mark are trying 3 layers of protective wrap around the wall to contain all the debris.
Okay, that was what we expected. All the protection has contained all the blast, but the columns, we can see how it all pulled out, and that is all the concrete display, so that'll be effective.
It worked with one wall, but what about the other 349 to blow down both the tower blocks?